We're really focusing on Israel on today's Harvest Show, but that's nothing unusual for us. We have a correspondent over there. Brian Bush is his name, and today Brian's standing by with a special guest. Go ahead and introduce him, Brian.
Well, thank you, Chuck. It's my pleasure. This is my long-term friend. We've known each other for a couple decades now since I've been over here in Israel, Joe Zias, and he's part of the Science and Antiquity group of Jerusalem. And I knew him through the Israeli Antiquity Authority. And, we thought that we would bring some facts to this question about the nails of Jesus, supposedly discovered a few months ago in a tomb outside of Jerusalem. And it's incredible, Joe, how people, when they find a believable story, they run with it without really investigating it.
First of all, you have to realize that when did the story break? It broke at Easter time. Easter time, media is always looking for an Easter story. This happened to be, personally, I think, one of the most unbelievable stories. I'm really surprised that anybody would believe it. But today, when people are looking for signs and wonders, this is what we see, unfortunately, on much of the TV today.
That's right. And there's some real problems with his prognosis about these nails being the nails that held Jesus to the cross. Can you tell us about that?
First of all, I'm the one who excavated them. I excavated the tomb myself along with a colleague. I did the physical anthropology, he did the archaeology.
And you are also the one who published the report, the original report.
Correct. They failed to read the report, that's for sure. And what they did, they were simply looking for an Easter story. And the nails which you see on TV, which were nails which had been in my presence 15 or 20 years before the tomb was ever excavated. Mm-hmm. They were nails which I got from somebody else. And there's so many problems anatomically. If you look at the nails, for example, here's the size of the nail which we found. Mm-hmm. Okay?
So this is a similar size nail to the one.
Similar size nails. And the thing is that they said, okay, first of all, the nail is very, very short. But they said, look, you have to realize that perhaps since it's for the hands, it could have been used. It couldn't be used through the hands. And first of all, one of the things you have to realize, when they crucified people back in antiquity, they always ran it through a piece of wood.
All right, so you run the nail through the wood.
And it increases the diameter of the nail. And then you have to then go and put the thing through the foot. So if we put it through the foot in this manner here, you realize, okay, it's impossible.
Well, let me illustrate that again for the folks, because here we have a similar size nail to the one that Mr. I always say it, Simca's saying was the nail that held Christ. And this is basically a human foot bone, and to put that through there, well, you don't have any bite at all. Correct. On that nail. So that could, let alone 1 foot, let alone 2.
Yeah. Here, you would need a nail at least this size. You see?
Wow.
And the other thing that they say, well, look at the size of the hands and the feet. Mm-hmm. One thing I want to show you is that I want to show you the audience here. Here, give me your wrist.
All right.
And if we look at this in terms of right here where the nails have to go through, it's more or less the same length as the heel.
Wow.
So if you take something like this here, it's just, there's no way. There's no way it could have been done.
Doesn't clear my wrist at all. Yeah. Of course, I probably would be a little bit bigger, but...
a little bit bigger, but no, there's no way, anatomically, no way it could have been done. But they were looking for an Easter story, and then things got worse. So what did they do? They decided to make Caiaphas, who was the one who was responsible for Jesus being on the cross, they decided to make him into a Messianic Jew. What happened? He regretted what he had done, and after he put Jesus on the cross, he said, wow, bury me with those nails. It's an absurd story. It's pandering to the community of people in America who are very, very naive, who are looking for signs and wonders. And as a scientist, we are against that. And it angers us really to no end.
And maybe it taps into human nature, too. We want to believe. And we want to think that Caiaphas turned out to be a good guy or something like that. Perhaps these things all get into the line of thinking. How do you think people should react when they hear? There's more and more stories now that are coming out of Israel relating to Joseph of Arimathea and Jonah. There's all these different things. How should the audience, let's say, react to something like that?
Okay, Brian, I want to take a word from your profession, a phrase. If your mother says she loves you, check it out. Working in biblical archaeology, I think that's the paradigm. We've seen so much of this. We had a conference in Duke a couple of years ago, how to take archaeology back from the media. And it's love the media and we hate the media, but we hate the way the media sometimes exploits us. Let me give you an example. From ancient times, Jews are always looking for signs and wonders. You see it, for example, you see it in Chronicles, where Paul says what happens is that the the Greeks want wisdom and the Jews want signs. And then we see it, for example, we see it later on in Matthew, where Jesus is arguing with the Jewish leaders here, and he says, "You want signs? I'll give you the sign of Jonah." Well, no sooner what happens, and this is a thing which is coming on now, you're going to see an hour or 2 hour documentary dealing with what? The sign of Jonah. And what angers us, it's not being done by archaeologists. It's being done by biblical scholars, archaeologists at these southern universities in the Carolinas and in Virginia, who not only did they find some way to put the sign of Jonah on an ossuary, but they decided even that one of the families in the house would be called what? The family of Arimathea. Now, when I heard this, Brian, I said, if this is right, I'm going to have to get on the road to Damascus. I got on my bicycle, I went over there, and sure enough, here in 3 different places on this house, this apartment which is above the tomb, what do we see? The name Arimathea. But I realized, wait a minute, it's brand new.
Right.
So I knocked on the door, went inside, and I said, I want to speak to Arimathea. She says, there is nobody here by the name of that name. I said, well, it's in 3 different places. Why? She said, the guy number 5 told me to do it.
Wow.
So I think that the viewers, if this thing comes out, there's a book which is supposed to come out, and again, it's one of these professors from the Carolinas, and we've been against this stuff for years now. There's so much money to be made in this kind of stuff that certain people sold out.
Right. Well, Joe, we're going to have you back on another occasion, because you bring a wealth of decades of working in archaeology and anthropology, and you can help clear the air on some of these claims. So we're grateful that you're doing what you're doing.
I'm doing it for the world of science, and I don't want to see people throw that hard-earned money away to this kind of stuff. And thank you, thank you for interviewing me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Well, Chuck, I think you agree with me. We got to have Joe Zias back on. And if people want to learn more about what Joe does, they can go to the web, and they can go to www.joezias.com. They can learn more about him and the work that he's doing here in Jerusalem. Chuck, back to you.
Sounds great, Brian. Fascinating facts today from Israel. And of course, Brian brings that kind of cultural information too through his blog very frequently, and you can access that at harvest-tv.com. He updates it every Tuesday and Friday.